The people who loved me most quietly dismantled me from the inside out. And the cruelest part, I smiled through every single day of it because I never remembered it was happening. Welcome to Dad's True Emotions. I want you to imagine waking up to the best silence of your life, not the silence of a problem or a worry or a house that's too empty. The kind of silence that wraps around you like a warm blanket on a cold morning, the kind where your whole body feels like it's finally exhaled after years of holding itself tight. That was me, that third morning at the lodge in Newfoundland. Eyes still closed, a small smile already forming because somewhere in my half-asleep mind, I was thinking, this is it. This is what 62 years of working hard earns you, this right here. I was wrong, more wrong than I have ever been about anything in my entire life. My name is Robert Haynes, retired civil engineer, 30 years with the same firm out of Corner Brook. I spent 3 decades calculating exactly how much pressure a structure can bear before it gives way. Bridges, buildings, foundations. I understood breaking points better than most men ever do. And yet I sat in that lodge on the eastern edge of Newfoundland, completely blind to the fact that someone had been engineering my collapse from the inside for 2.5 years. But let me take you back to that morning, because that's where everything starts. I opened my eyes and something was immediately wrong. The light coming through the curtains was too high in the sky. It had that wide, mid-morning quality, the kind that means it's past 9 o'clock, probably closer to 10. My daughter Claire was never in bed past 6. Not once in 34 years of knowing that woman had I beaten her out of bed. She once had coffee brewed, eggs made, and the porch swept before I'd finished brushing my teeth on a family camping trip. So when I lay there and heard absolutely nothing, no footsteps, no kettle, no low murmur of conversation, something cold moved through me before I'd even fully woken up. I sat up slow and called out, "Claire, hey Danny." Nothing. Not the comfortable quiet of people in another room, the heavy kind, the kind with actual weight to it. I pulled on my flannel and shuffled out into the main room of the lodge, and I stopped dead. Both beds made, not slept in and tidied made, checked out of a hotel made, Claire's bag gone, Danny's jacket, the dark green one he'd hung on the hook by the door the first afternoon we arrived, gone. The groceries we'd lined up along the counter, gone. The car keys on the wooden peg by the entrance, gone. I stood there in my socks on that cold hardwood floor and I laughed. I want you to understand that. I actually laughed out loud, to no one, in an empty room, because my very first thought was that my 2 kids were pulling the world's most elaborate prank on their old man. I walked straight to the window expecting to see Danny crouched behind the rental car, shoulders shaking, trying not to lose it. Claire standing somewhere nearby pretending she had absolutely nothing to do with it while having engineered the entire thing. The driveway was empty, the car was gone. I reached for my phone, not on the nightstand, checked my jacket pocket. Nothing. Went to the side table by the door where I always set my wallet before bed. Gone. And that's when the laughing stopped. Stay with me here, because this is where a man who spent 30 years in structural engineering does what he always does when faced with something he doesn't understand. He looks for the rational explanation. He builds a framework and stands on it. So I told myself they'd gone for supplies. Forgot to leave a note, which was unlike Claire but possible. They'll be back by noon. And I held onto that story while I searched every drawer and cabinet and corner of that lodge for my phone, my wallet, anything connected to the outside world. I held it while I found the only thing my children had left behind, a single orange prescription bottle sitting on the edge of the bathroom sink. No pharmacy label, no doctor's name. Just a small white sticker with 4 words in plain typed font. Take 1 daily. I picked it up, nearly full. I turned it over. Nothing. No dosage, no identifying information of any kind. I set it back down carefully, the way you put something down when you're not entirely sure what it is but you don't want it to know you're unsure. Noon came and went. 2 o'clock. 4. By 5, I'd walked the perimeter of the lodge 3 times, found exactly 0 passing vehicles on the dirt road, and eaten the only food left in the kitchen, a tin of soup I heated on the gas stove because at least they'd left the gas on. Small mercy. I sat on the porch steps as the sky turned that deep bruised purple that Newfoundland does better than anywhere else on Earth, right at the edge of full dark. And for the first time that whole long, disorienting day, I stopped looking for the logical exit and let myself feel what was actually happening. My children had left me, not forgotten me, not gotten delayed somewhere down the road, left me, deliberately, quietly, while I slept a sleep so deep and still I hadn't heard a single thing. And right then, as if that admission had loosened something deep in my chest, a memory surfaced. Thin and flickering, the way a candle behaves in a draft. I saw myself sitting in a bright white room, and there was a man across from me in a navy cardigan, leaning forward with a pen in his hand, speaking words I couldn't quite hear. And Claire was beside me, her hand wrapped around mine so tightly her knuckles had gone white. The memory lasted maybe 5 seconds. Then it dissolved, the way a dream does the moment you try to hold it. I pressed my fingers to my temples. I knew that room. I knew that particular feeling of sitting upright in a chair while being told something important. But the words, the man's face, the reason Claire's hand was squeezing mine that hard, none of it would come, just smoke. I told myself it was the stress, hunger, my brain doing what brains do under pressure, pulling up old footage that meant nothing. I was wrong about that too. That night I slept on the couch with every light in the lodge on, which felt both foolish and absolutely necessary. Sometime around midnight, I heard tires on the dirt road and I was off that couch and across the room before I'd even fully woken up, stumbling to the window. The headlights moved past without slowing. I stood at the glass long after they disappeared into the trees, staring into the dark between the pines. That's when I saw it. A small wooden sign nailed to the trunk of the pine directly across from the lodge's front door. I don't know how I'd walked past it a dozen times without seeing it. I opened the door and stepped out into the cold night air, and I squinted at it from the porch. 4 words, hand-painted, red letters on raw wood. You've been here before. I stood completely still. Something in my chest didn't panic when I read those words. It recognized. Like a room inside me that I hadn't known existed quietly opened its door. I went back inside, sat down in the armchair by the window, and I picked up that orange prescription bottle and turned it over in my hands, and I stopped pretending I wasn't afraid. I applied to myself the same methodology I'd used on structures for 30 years. Strip away everything except what you know for certain. 1, my children brought me here and left while I slept. 2, they removed every means of contact and identification. That was not panic, that was a plan. 3, they left one thing, an unmarked prescription bottle. 4, I have a memory I cannot access, a white room, Claire's pale knuckles, a man with a pen. 5, someone wanted me to know I had been in this exact spot before. Or rather, and this is the part that made me set the bottle down very carefully, someone wanted me to know that I had been here before. Robert, I said quietly to myself, to the cold room, to the sign outside and the orange bottle, and whatever it was I couldn't remember. Either you're losing your mind or someone helped you lose it. Find out which one before you do anything else. Morning came gray and damp, the mist sitting low between the trees like fog that had given up trying to go anywhere. And I found 2 things I'd missed in my panicked sweep the day before. The first was behind the baseboard panel under the kitchen sink, slightly loose at one corner in a way that didn't look like age. Tucked behind it, folded along precise clean lines, was a piece of notebook paper. I knew the handwriting before I'd fully unfolded it. I'd seen it on birthday cards and school permission slips and notes left on my refrigerator for 30 years. It was Claire's. I read it slowly, standing in that kitchen with the mist pressing against the window glass. Dad, by the time you find this, you'll be scared and you'll be angry and every part of you will believe we left you. I need you to understand that we did not. There is so much we have to tell you and we have tried. We have tried more times than you know. The doctor said the only way forward was for you to find it yourself. Please don't fight the memories when they come. Let them in. We love you more than you will ever be able to understand. See. I read it 4 times. I folded it back along its exact original creases, placed it in the pocket of my flannel, and sat down on the kitchen floor because my legs simply decided they were done. More times than you know, plural more than once. The second thing was outside, half hidden beneath a tarp near the woodpile. A tin box, green and slightly rusted at the corners, my name written on the lid in black marker. Not Dad, not Mr. Haynes, just Robert. Like whoever left it wasn't sure which version of me was going to open it. Inside, 3 photographs and a small note card. I looked at the photographs first. The first one was of me standing on this porch. This exact porch, this exact view of the tree line. Different flannel shirt, the same smile on my face, one arm around Claire, one around Danny. Taken from a distance like someone snapped it quickly. On the back in Danny's handwriting, 2 words. Trip 1. I turned over the second photograph slowly. Me again. Same lodge. My hair slightly longer, maybe 2 or 3 months of growth. Standing alone at the dock looking at the water, unaware of whoever was behind the camera. On the back, Trip 2. He found the sign. Didn't make it to morning. I stayed with those words for a long moment. I told myself I didn't know what didn't make it to morning meant. But I think I already knew. Third photograph, me sitting in the armchair, the exact one I'd spent last night in, head tilted back, asleep. The orange prescription bottle sitting right there on the table beside me, visible and deliberate. On the back, the handwriting was slightly less steady than the others. Trip 3. He took the pill. We had to start over. I set the photographs down on the woodpile. I had been here before. Not once. 3 times. And every single time something had reached in and erased it, and I had driven home to my quiet, retired life in Corner Brook with no memory that any of it had ever happened. 3 fishing trips, 3 mornings exactly like this one. 3 times my children had sat across from me at dinner, or called on a Sunday, or hugged me at Christmas knowing everything they knew while I smiled and asked Danny how work was going and complained about the weather. The note card inside the tin was a single line, no signature. This time, Robert, don't run from what you remember. And as if the part of my mind that had been bracing against a locked door finally decided the door itself was the problem, the memories came. Not gently, all at once, like water that has been held back for years finding the breach and pouring through. The white room, sharp now. I was sitting in a chair with armrests. The man across from me was in his late 50s, navy cardigan, reading glasses on a cord around his neck, and the careful, measured voice of someone who had rehearsed this particular conversation many times. Dr. Mercer. The name rose up from somewhere deep, floating to the surface the way things do when they've been held under for a long time. Claire was beside me, her hand around mine hard enough to hurt. Dr. Mercer leaned forward and said, in the smooth, rehearsed tone that doctors use when they've delivered difficult news so many times the words have worn smooth, what I'm describing is called severe episodic dissociative amnesia. Every 72 hours, your brain performs what I can only describe as a hard reset. You lose access to the previous memory cycle almost entirely. You function normally within each window, but when the reset occurs, that window closes. And I heard myself say, in a voice that was already exhausted before I'd fully understood what I was being told, how long has this been happening? Dr. Mercer looked at Claire before he looked back at me, just briefly. The way a doctor looks at the family member who has been living with the answer longer than the patient has. Robert, he said carefully, it's been close to 2 years. I came back to the woodpile, to the mist, to the tin box in my hands. 2 years. I had lost 2 years of my life in 72-hour pieces, over and over like a film someone kept cutting and replaying and cutting again. And my children had been present for all of it, watching me forget, bringing me back, carrying the full weight of it while I woke up every 3 days thinking everything was fine. I pressed the back of my hand against my mouth, because the thing coming apart in me wasn't the condition itself. It wasn't the lost years. It was the image of Claire and Danny driving away from this lodge on the first morning, knowing before they left exactly how it would end, and choosing to try again anyway. That is not abandonment. That is the most desperate, most courageous act of love I have ever been on the receiving end of in my life. But here is where the story turns completely, and I need you to stay with me. When I finally went back inside, washed my face, and drank water from the tap because it was that or nothing, I noticed the small television in the corner of the room. I hadn't turned it on once in 3 days. I crossed the room and switched it on. National news, and the face on that screen hit me like a physical blow. My hand went slack and the glass of water dropped and shattered on the hardwood, and I didn't even look down. I couldn't look away from that face. Wanted for financial fraud, falsification of medical records, and the illegal dissolution of a protected family trust across 2 provinces. That face belonged to my younger brother. Half-brother technically, same father, different mothers, different provinces, different worlds. His name across the bottom of the screen in white letters, Lawrence Haynes. Last known location, Eastern Newfoundland. I sat down on the couch very slowly. Lawrence. We had grown up parallel to each other, close enough to know the other existed and far enough apart to avoid the friction that came with actually knowing each other. The one period of genuine closeness between us had been a 4-year stretch in our 50s, when our father's health declined, and we'd been pulled into the same hospital waiting rooms, the same conversations about money and legacy, and what family means when it's being stress-tested. And during those 4 years, I had made the one catastrophic mistake of my adult life. I had trusted him. The memories were pouring in now, and I stopped trying to manage them and just let them come. Roughly 20 months before that first fishing trip, I had been approached by a private medical research foundation based in Halifax. They were conducting a longitudinal study on a rare neurological condition and needed participants who matched a specific profile. I remembered sitting across from Dr. Mercer for the very first time in that white office, his careful voice, the way he explained that I'd been referred for the study by a family member who believed I was exhibiting early symptoms. I remembered asking which family member. Dr. Mercer looked slightly uncertain. Then he said, "A Mr. Lawrence Haynes. He indicated he was your brother." I remembered the pause, the 2 seconds of silence before I said, "half-brother," as if that single word was a wall I could build between myself and whatever was coming. What I didn't know then, what the memories were now assembling piece by piece with the horrible precision of understanding something you should have seen years ago, was that Lawrence had not gone to Dr. Mercer out of concern. He had gone with a calculation that was, in its own cold way, almost remarkable. Our father's estate was held in a family trust worth just under $2.5 million. Lawrence's lawyers had found a disbursement clause buried in the original trust language that neither of us had ever had reason to examine closely. If either beneficiary was determined to be cognitively incapacitated, unable to maintain continuous long-term memory, unable to manage their own affairs, their share of the estate transferred automatically to the remaining competent beneficiary. $2.5 million, and all Lawrence needed was a diagnosis. He hadn't just reported symptoms to Dr. Mercer. He had manufactured them. The prescription bottle with no label was the mechanism. A compound, taken consistently, that induced precisely the memory cycling pattern that Dr. Mercer had been documenting and recording for months as a genuine neurological condition. Lawrence had been getting to me before every evaluation, slipping it into my food, my coffee. And this is what brought me to both hands flat on the kitchen counter, breathing deliberately through my nose for 30 seconds to keep from putting my fist through the wall. My vitamins. My daily vitamins, the ones my doctor had recommended years ago, the ones I took every single morning without fail, washed down with water and a sense of responsible self-care. Lawrence had replaced them. Months of replacements. And I had swallowed them every day thinking I was looking after myself while he sat across from me at dinner and said, "It's just age, Robert. It happens to all of us." But here's what Lawrence never factored in. He never factored in Claire. My daughter had noticed Lawrence's car outside my house one evening, parked in the driveway at an hour he had absolutely no reason to be there. Claire, who noticed everything, who had her father's engineer's eye for detail wrapped in something far sharper. She had taken my vitamins to a private lab. She had found Dr. Mercer independently, presenting as a concerned daughter, and she had asked questions that made him uncomfortable enough to begin asking his own. And when she brought Danny in, my quiet son, who spent 5 years working in financial crimes investigation, before leaving that career for reasons he'd never fully explained to me, Danny had looked at the structure of what Lawrence had built and known immediately which statutes it violated and exactly who needed to know. They hadn't brought me to this lodge to leave me. They'd brought me here to protect me. The missing wallet, the no phone, the no car, the complete isolation. It was a safe house strategy. Keep me unreachable and off the grid while Danny's former colleagues and a federal prosecutor finished building what they'd spent over a year assembling into something airtight enough to hold Lawrence Haynes for a very long time. The prescription bottle they'd left was the real one, Dr. Mercer's legitimate prescription. The compound that, taken consistently, would begin revering what Lawrence's version had done to my memory over 2 years. They'd left me the antidote. They'd left me Claire's note. They'd left me the tin box so that when the memories broke through, and they believed they would, they had trusted that they would, I would have the complete picture already waiting. My children had played this with exactly the same precision Lawrence played his game. They just played it with love instead of greed. I picked up the orange prescription bottle from the bathroom sink. I opened it. I held it for a moment looking at it. Then I took one. I walked back to the television and sat down in front of Lawrence Haynes' face on the national news. And for the first time in what I now understood was years, I let myself feel something all the way through. I didn't lose it halfway. I didn't forget it before it finished forming. I felt it completely. Clear, like a window you've been looking through for so long you've forgotten it was filmed with grime, and then someone cleans it. And the light comes through the way light is actually supposed to. 3 hours later, I heard a car on the dirt road, and this time it slowed. This time it stopped. I was off that couch and across the room before the engine cut. I pulled the door open, and Claire was already on the porch steps, and her face was doing everything at once, trying to be composed and completely failing, and I pulled my daughter into me in that doorway and held on. I'm not a composed man in moments like that. I want to be honest with you about that. I held on to my daughter in that cold Newfoundland doorway for a long time without saying a single word. Danny came through behind her, hands in his jacket pockets, jaw tight, holding back whatever he was holding back. I reached out and grabbed the back of his neck and pulled him in, and he made this sound, one sharp exhale, like a man releasing a breath he'd been holding for 2 years and had only just been given permission to let go. We stood there, the 3 of us, in that cold, empty lodge that had held 3 versions of the same morning. Nobody spoke for a while. Claire pulled back first. Her eyes were red, but her voice was steady because that's who Claire is. She looked at me and said, "Dad, do you remember?" I said, "All of it." Danny said, almost to himself, quietly, like a man checking something he'd been afraid to check. It worked. Lawrence Haynes was arrested less than 2 days after his face appeared on that national broadcast. Federal charges, financial fraud, falsification of medical records, and one count that Danny had spent 14 months helping build alongside his former colleagues, deliberate pharmaceutical manipulation resulting in documented and sustained cognitive harm to a named individual. They found the compound in a storage unit registered under a numbered company. They found months of correspondence between Lawrence and a pharmacologist whose license had been pulled years earlier. They found the falsified symptom logs, the manufactured evaluations, the entire careful fiction constructed to make Robert Haynes look like a man falling apart. The trust was reinstated. Every dollar. Lawrence's legal fees, which were significant because Lawrence had always been comfortable spending money that wasn't his yet, consumed his share before the second hearing was even scheduled. But the moment I have carried with me longest, the one I turn over on quiet evenings the way you turn a smooth stone in your palm just to feel the weight of it, was this. Lawrence's defense attorney, looking to establish that the alleged harm was overstated, requested that I provide a recorded statement confirming I had no lasting cognitive impairment, that I was, in the legal language, of sound mind and full recollection. I sat down in front of that camera in a quiet room in the courthouse. Claire behind me, Danny to the side with his hands in his pockets and that almost smile he keeps just barely off his face. I gave them 40 minutes. Dates, conversations, supplement replacement timelines, evaluation sequences, financial maneuver chronology. Every detail, every single thing Lawrence had spent 2 years trying to make me unable to hold. I held all of it. I laid it out with the precision of a man who spent 30 years calculating exactly how much pressure a structure can take before it gives way. The attorney stopped the recording twice to confer with his client. Lawrence Haynes took a plea agreement within the week. The last time I saw my brother, my half-brother, that distinction matters more than it ever did, was across a courtroom. He looked smaller. Men who build themselves on what they've taken from other people tend to shrink when those things are returned. He looked at me once before the judge addressed the court. I looked back. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. I remembered everything and he knew it. That was more than enough. I still go fishing. Real trips now. No strategy, no carefully arranged disappearances. Just me and a rod and the bad coffee, and if I'm lucky, one of my kids on the dock beside me giving me trouble about the hour. Claire still reorganizes things she has no right to reorganize, including, recently, my entire garage. Danny still holds that almost smile just off his face, like fully committing to it would cost him something. And I wake up every single morning knowing exactly who I am, exactly where I've been, and exactly what it cost the 2 people who love me most to bring me back to myself. I take my real prescription every morning. I remember everything. And I am, finally, completely, irreversibly awake. Because here's what Lawrence Haynes never understood about me. You can take a man's memory, but you cannot take what his children are made of. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment right now to hit the like button and subscribe to Dad's True Emotions. It costs you nothing and it means everything to us. We have more real, raw, and deeply emotional stories coming, and we want you here for every single one of them. Thank you for watching. Thank you for caring. Thank you for being part of this family.